Hello! Today I'm going to be talking about evaluation question 1, which is: in what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? Woo! So, to start with, just a little bit about our film. Our film was about a girl who moved to a new town, new school, and then fell in love with someone. However, what we did with our film is we made our girl fall in love with the most popular girl in school, which is a break of conventions, and I'll come on to talk about that in just a second. To start with, I'm going to talk about genre. What genre was our film? Our film was a chick flick, such as this film here. This is also a chick flick. Chick flicks sort of use a lot of mise-en-scène in their conventions. They are bright and bold with lots and lots of colour, the colour usually being pink. They use lots of fashion, and then in terms of the soundtrack, it's usually a very upbeat and contemporary soundtrack. It's very rare that it's a full instrumental score. You have lots of pop music in there, lots of fun. The word fun, upbeat and happy is going to come up a lot in this question. I apologise, but it's because it's what the genre is full of. Just fun, upbeat, girly themes. The editing tends to be quite fast-paced, but not too fast-paced, because then that would sort of border on thriller and possibly horror conventions. So the pace is just quite quick, but not too quick. And then in terms of cinematography, one of the big things you have is this idea of a reveal. They usually do that through a pan or a tilt. So when they reveal characters and you meet them for the first time, very rarely is it just bam, character and shot. You get lots of pans, lots of tilts, wipes, etc, etc. So, how did we meet the conventions of the genre? Well, our colour in our trailer was very bold. We had pink, 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 pink throughout. All our title cards were on a pink background, apart from our reviews. The font choices were very feminine, very girly, very flowy. They weren't sans serif, they were just serif. Have I got that the right way around? I think so. But yeah, they were but they were still very flowy. Like, they were very elegant. We used fashion a lot. Our three main influences as films were The Heathers, Clueless and Mean Girls. Something we noticed in all of those films was tartan. That's quite strange because I'm wearing almost a form of tartan now. So we made sure that we put our characters in tartan, not consistently. It wasn't a film about kilts, but we made sure that we just had little subtle influences of our film, of our little subtle traits of our influences in our trailer. There we go. We kept with the fast pace of the editing. We didn't leave too much room for dialogues. It's not an art film, it's a trailer based on a chick flick. So we wanted to make sure that conversation was often in shot, reverse shot. We had a nice selection of shots, because that is what a chick flick does. It gives you lots to look at, uses lots of different editing techniques, it doesn't overdo it with them. And then, how did we break conventions? Oh, sorry, how do we keep the conventions? Sound. Sound directly mirrored the mood. We had a happy, it was called Happy Magical something, the initial piece of music we used, which was, again, just kept with this upbeat feel, very fun. And then we went into a bit more of an indie, moody song by Simon Sterling called Acorn at the second half of our trailer. This was, again, it was directly mirroring the mood, but also keeping in mind that idea that chick flicks use very up-to-date, modern and recent music. The biggest thing we did was we broke conventions in representation. The representation we used in our characters is very, very uncommon in a chick flick. And I'm going to talk about that now because I'm about to move on to talk about representation. Ta-da! Representation. So, how do we stay with conventions? We make conventions in that our characters were young, they were female, and they were pretty. It's called a chick flick for a reason. It revolves around females. Obviously there's male characters in the film, and that is in every chick flick. A chick flick isn't a full female film, but we wanted to make sure that our central characters were females because we didn't want to break conventions too much there. They were young because our audience would be young. We didn't want to use 50-year-old women to try and target an audience of 16-year-olds, that would be ridiculous. We made sure that our characters were likeable and lovable, so one of them was funny, one of them was cute, one of them was sassy, so on and so forth. All these different emotions that come into one film, and so that every person in our target audience could find someone to connect with. Something that we did use as well is we made sure that our girls were fashion forward, but again that comes in with the mise-en-scène in genre conventions. Our character was a lesbian. This is a massive, massive change in representation for a chick flick. This is very, very, very unconventional. The reason we did this is because as a genre, it's very cliche. It's very, 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 like, been there, done that. We knew that in order to create a trailer for a chick flick that was believable, we had to stick with a lot of those cliche elements. Conventions are there for a reason, it's because it's what makes the genre familiar. However, we didn't want it to be too cliche, so we decided this is somewhere where maybe we can break the boundaries. So by making our main character a lesbian, it was great because we just felt like we're almost taking a bit more of a serious look on such a fun genre. Yeah, so that was a massive change in convention. When researching other films in the genre that had done it, we found like 2 where it happened, and were they successful? Not really. So it was great that we could try and do this, and with the vision that if we were to release it as a film, maybe it would get somewhere, because we'd stuck with the conventions earlier on in our film. So in terms of narrative theory, chick flicks are quite straightforward. They use binary oppositions. Binary oppositions is a theory coined by Levi Strauss. Good versus bad, old versus young, man versus woman. Chick flick is usually something like popular meets unpopular. We threw that in there with our main character Abby and our supporting character Jennifer, popular, unpopular. But we also wanted to go with social normity and breaking social conformation. Does that make sense? Basically, we put this idea of people that conform to societal conventions and people that don't. Which is interesting because this is about conventions. We thought that would just spice it up a little bit more and made it put it a bit more in social context. It just added a layer of depth to our film if we put one of our binary oppositions as just looking about conforming with society, especially when our film revolves around a girl that's a lesbian. The other narrative theory that is present in our film is Svetlana Todorov's 5 stages of equilibrium, 5 spheres of action. That's the one. It's a trailer, and a trailer is very hard to use narrative in, because, especially this theory, because this is the idea that you start with a stage of equilibrium, something goes wrong, you're in disequilibrium, something goes right or wrong, and you have a new state of equilibrium. With a trailer, you don't really want to give away your whole storyline, however it does have to have a flow. So we started with, at the start, you've got this equilibrium. The girl is in a new school. Something goes wrong, she falls in love with a popular girl. Disequilibrium, they have a fight. Because it's a trailer, we sort of then stopped it there, because this is like the really gripping part of the film, and we didn't want to ruin that. Conventionally, this does we sort of stuck with conventions of chick flicks here, because what we did is we did that narrative theory, we sort of bunched it down into a matter of like 1 minute, and then this next half was sort of giving you insight into what might happen next, like does this happen, does this happen, does this happen, as well as flipping back to this happens earlier, this happens earlier, this happens earlier. It's basically a trailer, it's all about showing the best bits, but without making it possible to follow. So, to wrap this up, because I've been talking for 9 minutes and 48 seconds, I'll probably have to edit some of this out. Our film breaks conventions and sticks with conventions. Basically, what we did was we thought conventions, wow, they're great. conventions are literally a skeleton for you to make a trailer. So what we did is we stuck with the majority of conventions in order to keep our film familiar. On the flip side, we took one really big convention, which is that characters in chick flicks are usually heterosexual, turned it on its head to make it homosexual, and we thought that makes our film familiar. Looking at lots of other films across the genre, they do this. They take a lot of conventions and then take one convention that's quite important and flip it on its head. This can be seen in Clueless, when the main character Cher falls in love with her stepbrother. Very unconventional. However, the rest of the film could not be more conventional. We think this just helps get our target audience down because they recognise the genre, they're familiar with the genre, but also expands it a little bit because you get this new group of people that are like, wow, that's different, I'd like to watch that. So yes, in what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media products like that? Thank you very much.